Welcome to this celebration of 30 years of the Enneagram Professional Training Program and the narrative tradition Enneagram. It's great to see everybody here today and look forward to hearing from many people. It's our first time with this large a gathering on Zoom, so hopefully everything will work out technically. I'm Peter O'Hanrahan, and I'll be hosting this program along with my colleague and friend, Terry Saracino. In 1988, Helen Palmer and David Daniels led the first training program in Berkeley, California. And since then, the EPTP has spread to many countries around the world, most of which are represented here today in our speakers. The program has certified over 1,500 teachers in the narrative tradition and also professionals using the Enneagram in their practice. And of course, there's been thousands more who've been part of the EPTP over the years. It's sad that David Daniels is no longer with us, but we honor him today along with Helen, and we know that his spirit is still present. And his work, his pioneering work, continues to inform us and guide us in our teaching and, of course, our work on ourselves. It's also the 30th anniversary of Helen's first Enneagram book, well, the Enneagram. And her book and Don Risso's first book, Personality Types, made the Enneagram available to a large audience of people beyond the actual classes taught by the first generation of teachers. So it's been quite a 30 years, process of 30 years. Of course, since then, there's been many Enneagram books published, and those include David Daniels' very popular book, The Essential Enneagram. So as well as celebrating Helen and David today, we are also here to celebrate all the people who've been dedicated to the narrative Enneagram over the years, people who spread the system far and wide. And we look forward to hearing from many of our teachers today about your experience with the EPTP and teaching the Enneagram. We wouldn't be here today without all of your efforts as teachers and without the organization of the narrative Enneagram, which has been made possible by our staff and our board of directors and all the many volunteers who've worked so hard behind the scenes for many years. So it's good work, and I think we're making a difference in the world. The Enneagram is part of a movement of evolving consciousness, and it has a special role in bringing together the fields of psychology and spirituality. So welcome to everybody, teachers and staff, and those of you who are watching this program from your home or office, and thanks for being with us today. Terry?
Yeah. I'm like over the moon seeing everyone here, and I can just imagine David, whose goal was, let's take the Enneagram to the world. Seeing all of you all over the world and just beaming. It's quite a remarkable feeling I'm having, just seeing everyone's face, 25 at a time of the speakers, and unfortunately not able to see all those that are joining us. At last count, there were 225 people that were going to be signing in from around the world, and we're just so glad you're here to share this time with us. I also want to just take a minute and say we're also celebrating this year the joining of our two nonprofit organizations, the Enneagram Association of the Narrative Tradition, which started 25 years ago, and as many of you have been presidents and members of that, and the Enneagram Studies in the Narrative Tradition, which was the training organization. This is the first year we came together in January of this year. So I'm also feeling all the narrative Enneagram energy here now to carry forward the next 30 years wherever that's going to take us. So I'm just full of joy, and who would have thought, right? 30 years ago, here we are. So before we go to our speakers, and before we go to Helen, I just want to take a minute and thank and introduce the Narrative Enneagram Board of Directors, which is a board that was made of both of the organizations that came together this year. So if you would just raise your hand when I say your name, I'd appreciate it. So Cheryl Cowen is the board chair. There's Cheryl. Raise your hand. Okay. Chris Copeland, we can't see his face, but he's the telephone. Couldn't call in. Thank you, Chris. Jerry Fathauer, where are you? From Cleveland. Welcome. And Gary from Charlotte. Thank you. Tina Hack from Grass Valley. Hello. Joyce Plaza from Pennsylvania. Thank you all for your service and all you've done this year and in your Enneagram work prior to having us at this place. I'd also like now to introduce our executive director, Mary Friend, and also thank her for coming on 2.5 years ago and helping us get this organizational structure going and bringing these two organizations. A lot of work behind the scenes here. Thank you, Mary. And then our webmaster and marketing director, Evangeline Welch, who really needs a round of applause for doing all this. Like, thank you, Evangeline, for your technology support and all your marketing work. And then Allison Dehart, where are you? There's Allison, who has both registrar and accounting right now as we're in transition, carrying many loads. Thank you so much. Pat O'Hanrahan, where are you? I know you're with Helen and Marion somewhere. Pat, there you are. Thank you, database and intern coordinator, longtime Enneagram lover. And now Elizabeth Elkins, newcomer, where are you? Our social media. We older generation Enneagrammers need these new people that understand this social media. And Liz does that for us. Thank you, Liz. And I don't think Terry Muir is on here. She's our product fulfillment coordinator. And then finally, Joanne Smith is a woman behind the scenes that supports all of our marketing and other efforts. So thank you, Joanne. So, Helen, over to you.
So Helen.
Peter wants to say something.
Yeah, so Helen. So, of course, we wouldn't be here without you. So we want to thank you for your vision, you know, your amazing work over the years. And I guess there's a lot of things I could say, but I think the thing I want to say today is thank you for your persistence. You know, you've hung in there. Mm-hmm. You know, I knew you 40 years ago when you were just starting to teach the Enneagram, and it's just been remarkable to see you kind of steadily teach, write, publish, and also to, you know, connect with so many people around the world. And I think that one of the things I from my point of view, why we're still here, why this whole thing is successful, is that you and David both had the ability to see people, connect with people, and enroll us in your greater vision of what the Enneagram can do in this world. Mm-hmm. So thanks for all that. And I hope you feel pleased seeing all these great people around the world who've been part of the narrative work.
Thank you very much, Peter. I have just a few minutes, but I wanted to say that I met David Daniels 45 years ago. And it was on a dare from one of his colleagues from Stanford University, where he was teaching psychiatry. And he was challenged to flesh out some of these weird ideas he had about how higher states of consciousness, which was not the best topic in the world to bring into a school of psychiatry at that time. But David was relentless, and finally brought the first IEA meeting, International Enneagram Association meeting, which is now quite full, quite an important group. He brought it to Stanford University against all odds. He refused to give up. And the stamina that he had to make this public and dignified. And indeed, he dignified us from the beginning and still does through his stature as an academic and through his persistence, as you say, of bugging and annoying the Stanford people enough that we would have a first international meeting in 1994. So between 88 and 94, the first book and the Stanford conference, a whole lot happened. And that was the beginning of this joining, because David and I were, so dedicated to the idea of bringing spiritual method to psychological distress. That's what bound us together. And it has persisted and grown in understanding in the whole culture around the world that there's something you can do right now instead of going into the past and understanding and evaluating and thinking about and having emotions about past events. There's something that you can do right now through the practice of being in the present moment. If we only as teachers get that far in the world, it would be a huge healing. We don't have to all be enlightened people. I think of myself as an intuitive, but that's an intermediary stage between a real peace inside continuously, which is the promise of all of this, that we can live in a state of peace even under very difficult circumstances. We're having a huge fire here in California. You may have heard of it. And there's a lot of agitation in the people. They need this material. They can bring this material to times of great distress. And I'd like to go back to the very primitive beginnings of this joining of psychological, spiritual unfoldment within ourselves. I taught the in and down method because when I first started teaching, there was nobody in California teaching presence. There was no yoga studio on the corner. There was no Zen temple that you could go to for retreat. There was no teaching, no understanding. But I had this one impulse. Let's just go there. Bring your attention inward. This one impulse. If I can just get inside myself, I can quiet me. And if I'm quiet, I'll be a far more objective perception to be able to help people as they actually are, instead of being so busy thinking about what they are when they're in distress. I might actually be able to join with them internally. It was a great understanding at a time when there was absolutely no teaching, at least in the United States. So come in. And using what is called the witness, the pure consciousness that never gets wired into the type pattern, which is in everyone. They just don't know about it yet. Can you drop your attention down through your body, witnessing through your throat and your chest? And behind the great shock points in the body, the solar plexus, can you relax through into the abdomen where breath and attention join, and the body can be made peaceful and undisturbed, even under great pressure. And witnessing the breath as it rises and falls. Just be carried by the breath. Be guided by it. When thoughts come, let them go. When a passion arises, an emotion fueled by instinct, very strong emotion, when an emotion arises, relax resistance. Be unguarded. This is news to the ego structure, which is here to defend us after all. But by bringing the practice very close to the problem of distress under pressure, if you could relax that in and down. So this simple method, it took hold with a lot, and I've met all of you in other places. And it was always fresh way back then. Nobody had heard of this. And so the Enneagram, which is the description of the types and the structure, all of a sudden had a new meaning. You can go beyond type. you can relax into and through the type. That's the method of going beyond. You're not going to get rid of it, but you can convert the energy that is usually expended automatically in the type structure. Stay in. And using the witness, just stay in and down and be carried for 1 minute. Now stay in, but open your eyes. Carry yourself in that way. Because you can receive impressions that are normally blockaded by the type structure. You can receive impressions. That's the great promise. Accurate, objective, and not projections, but true receptions of objective reality as it actually is. That's the real teaching that binds all of us together. And of course, in the next unfolding years, this has become a commonplace thing. But what is not announced very well in the Enneagram teaching as yet is the range of the received experience. And that's coming now in your generation of students. That's coming as a real teaching of being more objective, of suffering less, which impedes all objectivity and produces projections actually or through a focus of attention outward. But when you're in, things get settled, things become more orderly, and we can be of use and of service to our students by teaching them this method, which they can carry on in their lives. And you'll find promising people, as I did along the way. I met Jürgen Gundel. He was one of the first. I met Paul Cowen. He was another. I met Josephine second in England. I met Barry and Nuala Ahern in Ireland. There were 18 countries. I met the Bishop of the Philippines one day. Oh, by the way, through the Jesuit stream of teaching, this is very familiar to me, he said. Could you teach me about personality? I don't know anything about that. But I do know the teachings of the Jesuit tradition that they carried through all of it. I wasn't breaking new ground. There was a big spiritual Christian tradition that went before me, and a great spiritual Hindu tradition, and a Sufi tradition, and all of them, because they all want you in a praying state of mind, to be receptive to reality as it actually is. Isn't that simple? Well, it's very difficult to do, but it's easy enough to point the way. And when you see a promising student, when you see somebody who has the charisma and the wherewithal and the focus and the desire to carry it forward, teach them as I brought you to it. All I did was stay in the background. It was a great thing.
Oh, the heck you did, Helen.
Oh, I did. I wasn't there personally.
I'm not going to let you get away with that.
Well, the big thing was getting in all those airplanes, yes. Right. But the beautiful thing was the translators, without whom none of this would have happened. So thank all of you. And look for the promising ones, the ones who suffer most and want out, and have the wherewithal to stabilize their attention. That's all you really need to look for, is that degree of concentration. Thank you so much for being you. You just dear to my heart. And I've forgotten many faces, and there they are again. I see them. So thank you for showing up.
Thank you, Helen. The message in a way is so simple. Just be here now. And here we are 30 years later, all of us different from where we were and still trying to be here now. So I'd like to transition now, and Evangeline has a clip of David. So it's David speaking about his passion. And then we'll hear from Denise, what your dad might want to say today. Denise.
Indirectly, because coming from a background in academic psychiatry, clinical psychiatry, I just hated typologies because we put people in boxes that were not very kind boxes. But when I realized that these were about adaptive patterns that go right down to the core of one's existence, one's motivation, one's core beliefs, and that there's this pattern of attention and energy interwoven, it was like this huge self-discovery process. And I couldn't stop but bringing it to Stanford and bringing it to the community. And we actually had the first International Enneagram Conference at Stanford in 1994, attended by over 1,200 people. So it was like bringing this rich system about our adaptive patterns and how they misguide us because they were formed so early in our lives in implicit memory before we even had cognition. And so they're so rooted in us, we needed to do this work. We needed to be able to understand ourselves better. We needed to be able to be present to ourselves. And in that narrative tradition, it's about opening one's heart to other people and opening our hearts to ourselves and being there in presence. And when you do that kind of exploration, that discovery from this place, it changes everything. And people can change very rapidly. They can move through their patterns. They can get on that path of liberation. It wasn't about putting people in boxes. It was about getting them out of boxes.
Denise, welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm so full with love right now, seeing everybody's faces on Zoom and just hearing my dad's voice. And Helen, thank you for bringing me into my heart. That was a beautiful, beautiful words that you spoke. And I'm definitely in my heart right now. And so thank you, everyone. I just want to start by saying congratulations for the 30 years to Helen and Peter and Terry and all of you for carrying on this great work. It is amazing that it's 30 years. So what I wanted to do right now is my dad wrote a book the last 3 years of his life that really came from his heart. And I read it recently and it felt very fresh to me, even though I'd heard him say these things before. So I thought I would read a passage from his upcoming book. And then I'd like to return to acknowledging the Enneagram Professional Training Program. So yes, his book is The Enneagram Relationships and Intimacy, Understanding One Another Leads to Loving Better and Living More Fully. And in the book, he says, I do believe that ultimately all that we have of ultimate value is love. Love, after all, begins and ends as an inside job. What I cannot emphasize enough, which was one great discovery across years of study, experience, and research, from leading years of Enneagram narrative panels to the hours spent with struggling couples, is that our relationship to self is what actually determines the kind of relationships we will allow, engender, and cultivate with others. And he goes on to say that in all his 40 plus years of therapeutic work, that there was nothing that came close to the Enneagram in terms of understanding oneself and understanding others. They're all pieces of it, but the Enneagram has the whole. And so it's, just wanted to offer that up. So yes, he co-founded with Helen Palmer 30 years ago. And the Enneagram Professional Training Program. And I would say it's no exaggeration that he would want this to go on forever. And I know he's just so grateful to all of the teachers and trainers that are out there carrying on the work, as Helen mentioned, and that hope that each generation keeps passing it to the next generation as the material evolves and our understanding of the Enneagram evolves. And so thank you to all of you for that. And then I also wanted to say how much my father loved teaching the Enneagram and going all around the world to teach all of you. And he got so much out of it. He loved the teaching, but he also loved the receiving. You know, he had this ability to be receptive. So he was always receiving all of you. And what he talked about that was so nurturing for him is his experience of just in a quick period of time in these training sessions to see people make leaps and bounds in their growth, and how incredibly rewarding and nurturing that was for him. So I'm just here to say that my dad would be incredibly grateful for all of you to continuing the work and the Enneagram Professional Training Program. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you for being here. And yeah, just we can all feel your dad's presence in all of us, in all these countries all over the world. And I want to introduce our next speaker. So Helen and David, as Peter said, it's a great tool for psychological and spiritual integration. And then I don't know about you, but in my journey, I hit this thing called my body that had a bit of a problem going along with the program of my psycho-spiritual integration. So at the same time I was discovering how to work with that barrier in me, along comes Marion Gilbert to a training because one of her employees had come down for a training and came back a changed person. And she said, I got to check this out. And I'll let you, Marion, tell the rest of the story about your great contribution of adding to the somatic work that we had, knowing we had the body, but bringing in your particular experience to round out our training to be psychological, spiritual, and now we have a somatic component thanks to your great work. So please.
Thank you, Terry. I'm indebted to you and Peter for bringing me in and on and being excited about this piece that I started to get that it was mine to bring when I was in the training in 2005. And I remember sitting in Helen's meditations, and I believe that when she started to talk about going in and down, I realized that the in and down really was that body part and the body center that wasn't really fleshed out on that little, what do you call that thing? The little diagram, but it's called Frosty, with the three centers vertically connected. And then I realized from my own spiritual background and the missing middle piece that I understood that psychology was an important part in my training that I needed to begin to see in the form of patterns, the way the Enneagram was explaining that. And then I realized through the defense system that there is a need for all of us, if we want to walk our talk, is to go to the root of where all these patterns begin. And that is for sure in the very first tracks in the snow, like Helen would say. You know, it's the very first way that the nervous system is trying to really organize itself in order to survive and adapt, which then later on, David Daniels would call learning. Mm-hmm. And this is how we learn how to become human beings, you know, and that is an important intelligent development. And there is an issue at the end of your development that doesn't bring you closer to the spirit and the essence of your type or of who you are. Like Helen says, you know, and I experienced that myself, that, you know, who we truly are is never going to be hardwired into your type structure. So that requires enough of a relaxation in the actual underlying energetic part of our being. And I was so excited at the time, and at the same time really kind of frightened about that very clear invitation. And I think Terry and I had a beautiful meeting in that particular training, where we both recognized that it was both of our loves, you know, to drop down and bring the body center, you know, to the Enneagram and flesh it out. And I'm really grateful for that invitation. Thank you all for, you know, integrating that in the spiritual work that is so necessary.
And thank you, Marion. And I want to say that the narrative Enneagram, I think one of the things that sets us apart from other schools is first the panel method, of course, but then our framework for all of us holding the spiritual about being more receptive, the psychological about loosening our type structure, and then the somatic of having skillful means to work with these patterns in our bodies when our bodies go, no, don't change. And that putting all those three together and integrating that is really what our work is about. So thank you, Marion, for your important piece.
Very much so. Thank you.
And now I'd like to introduce Rene Rosario, our newest core faculty member, although not new anymore. Rene, what do you want to add to this?
Well, first of all, I just feel so touched, so grateful, so exciting to see everybody. And yeah, I was so honored to be invited to this organization and to teach, which I've been doing, you know, for almost 2 years, but being able to teach in the narrative tradition with all of you, it's just been an amazing. And to Denise's point, what she said, like when her dad would like this to go on forever, one of the things I'm so excited about right now is that we have this amazing group, really since the last 1.5 years, of young people showing up at our trainings that are like already really skilled and good, and that they're totally on fire. You know, I remember in one class, when these people started showing up, this one young woman said to me, "Don't worry, Rene, we got this." And it was just so exciting. So I just feel like really that this will go on forever, and that it's going to be left in really good hands for the next generation. So I just feel totally honored and grateful for this work. I can't imagine my life without it.
Thank you. And thank you for your great work and your great love and your great commitment to this and all you've done too. So now we're going to transition, and Peter's going to say a few words, and we're going to hear from our international speakers.
Well, one of the great things about the EPTP is that it's gone to other places in the world and landed in the hands of very capable people. And so I'm looking forward to saying hello and hearing from, you know, many of those capable people here today. And, you know, it's a labor of love. Nobody's getting rich teaching the EPTP. But it's important work. And, you know, it's fascinating to me to see how people get not only engaged with the Enneagram, but some people really come on fire with it and really put so much of their time and effort. And I want to say thank you to all of our international trainers for just the amount of effort that you've put into this over the years and the communities that you've inspired. And at least for me, that just keeps my spirit alive. Just thinking about all this. We have a lot of our international folks with us today. There are some people missing, and I just want to mention that for people in Asia and Australia, this is the middle of the night. So we do have a couple of our Chinese colleagues with us. Thank you for being here. But we weren't able to get everybody on because, hey, it's a 24-hour world. So, but I do want to mention that, the training has been in Australia for many years. The training has also been in Singapore. We have, of course, lots of activity happening in China. We'll hear more about that later. And I just want to appreciate also Monica Tinoco, who's not with us today. She's on a 10-day meditation retreat, who was the sponsor and my colleague at doing the EPTP in Mexico for 5 years. So Mexico, Brazil, Asia, and so many places. So anyway, but let's talk to our friends who are with us today and hear, your perspective on the EPTP and the Enneagram.
So we want to start with you, Jürgen, as the first official EPTP overseas. What do you have to share with us?
Just actually, I feel a bit like a fossil when I hear that. It's like we started, Aline Moore, Norbert Heg, and I started the first EPTP in Germany in 1995, which is an amazing 23 years. So we will have our anniversary or our celebration in 2020, 25 years of EPTP in Germany. So it makes me proud, makes me feel old too, but it makes me feel proud to have been part of all this in all these years. And also, even though I'm probably not the most easiest person to be with. That's what's good. I felt trust from your side, from Helen, from David, from Terry especially. And so I'm grateful to be part of the party. The training went on ever since. We had a couple of hundred, if not 1,000 participants. We have certified about 180 people in this tradition. We have an association. So it's just for those who haven't met me since a long time, we are still alive. We are growing. We are looking forward to be part of this in the future. Rene said something about young people in the audience. This is something we are aiming at in the future, to work with the generation of our grandchildren, actually. So they are very, very open, I think, for the work. And I'm always enthused when I work with them, which I do a lot in recent years and months. So was that my 2 minutes of fame?
Yeah, I think so. You did a good job.
I want to mention as well, we have 2 trainings in Germany we're kind of working successfully and separately from each other. And I guess Pamela Michaelis will talk more about that in a minute or so.
Right. Thank you, Jürgen. Over to you, Pamela. Unmute. Please unmute your mic. There you go.
Yeah, lovely to hear your voice, Jürgen. I just want to say thank you first of all. I think, from the deepest gratitude, thank you, Helen. Thank you, Terry and Pete, for having held this together. I know that it's much easier to be a teacher and to have people following you. it's much more difficult to be an organization. And I am just so happy to have, you know, been on this path, been lucky enough to know Arlene Moore at the time, Jürgen, Norbert Haig, and I came into the first trainings with Helen. And that's what led me to be teaching the Enneagram today in the narrative tradition. We started our first training in the north of Germany, 2006, and we have Enneagram intensive every year, 20 to 25 people. In 2007, as Jürgen said, we separated, and I started working together with Norbert Haig, and we grounded a coaching training because we wanted to teach the Enneagram with professional tools so that it could be applied as a professional training. And then in 2010, with another colleague, Tilman Metzger, who brought mediation to Germany. So very much, you know, these kind of being very, the first people to do something. We were the first ones to bring the Enneagram and mediation together. And we've now been teaching that for 10 years, which is, and we have some people who do the Enneagram certification, the mediation certification, and the coaching certification. We call that a master training.
Great.
Yeah, and it's just beautiful. It's just wonderful work. As David said, love is the purpose of life. We have someone who's always saying love is the ground of all creation. We have wonderful people, young people who are helping us. As you said, social media, that's the way we want to go. And we have trained many people already, and looking at the kind of network that's being built up, we are moving towards normal. We all say normalizing. We want to normalize the whole issue of the 3 centers, the body work, which is so important for us. We try to bring a foundation of neuroscience into everything we do, so people feel secure listening to us.
So you're running about out of time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We want to move over to you, Paul Cowen. Tell us about your work.
I want to start by describing the journey with Rosemary. Rosemary sends her apologies. She is the driving force in the UK, certainly between the two of us. Back in 2002 in Vallombrosa, David was running a panel, and on the panel was a 9, and that 9 was forgetting herself. I won't mention her name. And she was forgetting herself by forgetting to take her medication. And in that panel, which David ran exquisitely, she started to remember herself. And Denise was talking about the leaps and bounds and the growth. And David in his video was talking about being liberated. Rosemary turned to me in that panel and said, "This is so important, we have to teach this in the UK." And that's driven her and driven me. We set up the London Enneagram Centre in 2002, that same year. And it's been running ever since as a monthly group. There are monthly groups that take place throughout the UK. And I'm delighted to say a new generation of teachers is emerging. It's fantastic. EPTP, which started in 2005, Helen, David, fantastic. And you, Terry, and Peter helped us get that going. Rosemary's been teaching and leading those since. Those are bringing on new teachers. And I think there's a really buoyant community there. The Enneagram is being taught from Christian retreat centers through to US Air Force bases in the UK, from businesses all the way through the prisons. And it's getting out there. And I think with the UK, there's never been a more important time, given our split from Europe, that we're actually beginning to mend and to heal. And there's never been a better time for the Enneagram. So all of you guys, thank you for all that you brought. I think both Rosemary and I channel David every day. So our thoughts go to him and to his family and to you all with our thanks.
And please give Rosemary a hug from all of us too. I'm sorry she couldn't be on today. She's done such great work. Thank you. And over to you now, Josephine, also in the UK, touched so many people. What would you like to add?
Well, I'd like to first thank you very much for asking me to take part. Thank you. And I want to talk about the very first workshop I ever ran, which I did for Paul Cowen when he had his small breakaway years ago. And there must be 20 people in the room. And I was determined that we would have not just the core theory, but we would have time to also talk about the spiritual side of the Enneagram. And at the end, somebody came up to me and said, "Why didn't you say more about God?" Good question. But the even better feedback from that day was that the following week I heard that a young 7 had gone home, got down on his knees, proposed to the woman he lived with because the session had shown him his pattern so clearly of needing newness, etc., etc., and he wanted to be constant.
Oh.
That was the first workshop. The last one I led earlier this year, and now I'll just quickly tell you that from Oxford we have a trained 8 who is developing an Enneagram learning community. We sent the young Malay back to home to Malaysia, and he is preparing the ground for Peter to go out, I hope, in a year or so. Another 4 is going to be, when he's finished his training in the new year, he's going to be a founder member of the Enneagram Prison Project. And for me tomorrow, I come full circle because I support a social 3 as she introduces the Enneagram to the current batch of training spiritual directors in the Oxford Diocese. Which is where I came in 10 years ago. So the Enneagram in Oxford, in the narrative tradition, is alive and well. Thank you.
And congratulations on your retirement.
Thank
you.
Thank you, Josephine, by the way. Thank you so much.
It was a good day, Paul. It was a very good day.
Okay, so where's Layla? Up to Finland. Peter.
Well, just great to hear from everybody briefly, and I realize time is so short. I mean, I just want to hear more, but anyway, here we are, and thanks everybody for speaking. You know, it was one of my privileges to go to Finland with the EPTP and meet the community of Finns, and I can just say that was just an amazing experience. And you know, Leila Valtonen has been our trainer and our leader there for many years, and Leila, what would you like to say to us today about kind of your reflections on the Enneagram in Finland?
I just first of all want to say thank you, and I think we would need more of this kind of meetings together internationally. I really value this and your effort for putting this up. And I just want to say that joining the EPTP some over 20 years ago really changed my life in the way that you may be able to imagine from your own experience and what happens to 9s. And so before I went to California to really study the EPTP, luckily Jürgen, you invited Helen to Germany, Heidelberg. And so I could go and check, you know, how she is and what Enneagram is and with you. And then I decided to go and join the EPTP. So the networks have been working in a wonderful way at different times in my Enneagram life. And I really clearly remember first time going to Vallombrosa. I still remember very vivid dreams. I remember very special walks with you, Helen. Thank you so much. And all that life-changing atmosphere there. And I think I was very, very privileged, like Peter, you mentioned that you were here to start with us, the EPTP programs, and before you, even David Daniels. And I just really appreciate the way that you, David and you, Peter, helped us to start from a very solid ground to our work. And now later, we've had 1 or 2 intensives every year ever since, over 20 years. So we have tens of teachers trained. I have to go back and count exactly. And in the last year, it's been a privilege to teach with EPTP with the next generation teachers. Sari Ayanko with her background in coaching and leadership, and my daughter Laura Valtonen with her background in social sciences and refugee work. And so the work is going on, and I think as it goes on globally, we will need each other even more in the challenges that we face. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, the theme that I'm hearing and appreciating is that, you know, there's another generation now coming along. And, you know, as we know, there's this great saying that I like, which is, if we're really going to move along on the path, we have to replace us. So we're still working that. Anyway, on to France, where, gosh, the community has gathered. And so, you know, talk to us. Under the leadership of Brigitte Guillaume and Jérôme Virolou and Denis Tendron and now other trainers, Enneagram certified teachers and other EPTP trainers. Hello.
Hello. Hello. Hello. We are very happy to be there. With you. I'm reading my text because my English is not so good. So, thank you and congratulations to Helen and David because they learned a lot. And thank you also to you, Peter and Terry and everybody on the team over there. You learned so many things, so many marvelous things. Our American teachers and friends have been and are very important to us. We have a great chance. I would like to introduce you the Organov team with our 7 associates, 6 trainers, and 1 administrator. Organov is working with companies, and we like it very much. Today, more than 10,000 men and women came to our training programs who are younger than you. We'll celebrate our 20 years anniversary next year. And let me introduce also the Enneagram School team with our 4 associates. I would like to introduce, everybody knows Jérôme, no problem. and Denis is not here. He's training in the north of France. Denis on the picture. And Stéphane, Jean-Marc, Audrey, Linda, and all a part of our community in France. We are all teaching the narrative tradition and so happy to do that. We are organizing about at least 30 panels a year with our students and a large community. As Denis are going to retire, 2 new associates are coming soon. So you will see them, Denis and other people later. Thank you. I stop here because I will be too long. Sorry for thank you for this gathering, wonderful gathering. Thank you, and we have a cake. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Thank you.
That room, I know that room, and I know those faces. And might I mention that the French, they like to celebrate. So thank you for being with us today. It's great to see you all. let's move across to Ireland now and talk to one of my old friends and colleagues who's been kind of the, I don't know what to say, Barry. You've been, you were the point person for so many years for the narrative in Ireland, and just what would you reflect on today with us, Barry or Helen?
You need to unmute.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. I was pressing the same button, but it wouldn't go. Okay, where am I? Sorry about this. Okay.
There he is.
Okay, so Helen was the first person who came over, who was invited by a very fine Jesuit called Miles O'Reilly. And really, we could thank Miles for all that ensued, because I went off. It was the quickest decision I made, was to do a training. I think Helen came in June, and I said, I'm signing up for this thing in August. And Joan Ryan, who I'm delighted to see online today, was there too. So I had absolutely no intention of teaching. I just found the material very interesting. But as it went on, I said, gosh, this is interesting. So opportunities standed up. And of course, then we had David, and we had Peter coming over many times, and we're very grateful for that. So there's a great familiarity, there's quite a community here. We've had just 1 or 2 trainings, but most of them go overseas in order to be trained now, because the population of Ireland would fit in a small corner of Los Angeles. So there's not that many of us. But I'd just like to finish off really with a kind of a poem or a reflection, if that's okay. Be at peace with all your experiences, your fears and your terrors, your joy and your tears. For all the universe is one, there is no separation. The ocean, the wind, the stones, the forests, the air. You are part of the vastness that is both empty and full. Be at ease with everything, and all will be at ease with you. Nothing takes place of its own accord, all is one. Every creature is your sister and brother. Take care of all and be kind. For through you flows a river of peace that soothes all around you. Be with that peace.
Mm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Barry.
Thanks, Barry, and love to Nuala. So, okay. Moving again, this time to Italy, I'd like to hear from our friend Mauro Vettovello. And Mauro, being, I think, a bit newer to the Enneagram and someone I consider part of the next generation. So Mauro, what would you like to share with us today?
Well, thank you, Peter. Thank you all having me here today. Well, I'm relatively new. Well, I've been offering EPTP for the last couple of years, so it's been something new, which is actually the first international certification with the Enneagram in Italy. And that's an amazing result. So, and I have to thank my friend Rene, which unfortunately is not here today, and who's been my mentor in this many years. So, and I enjoyed being part of this big community, which I think we don't need to wait another 30 years to do this kind of gathering. So hopefully, so it makes me feel, part of something bigger than me personally. So, and I think I want to say something about the method, which proved to be very successful. Especially the narrative approach is, to me, really the best methodology today, the best tool actually. When you want to teach the Enneagram and you have people speaking from their type, from their inner core, it's the best way to learn, and it's also a gift when you are a teacher, but it's also a gift for the panelists who are teaching us, who really are in their personality, psychologically and spiritually. So I think this is probably the greatest contribution that the narrative has offered me and all of us in this new world. And I truly believe that, you know, world peace has to come from this specific, call it training, call it knowledge, call it change, whatever, but it has to come from this. So I have never seen anything more successful into bringing that new state of consciousness that we all need. So thank you all. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Peter, for being such a good friend too. Miss you. I miss you our time in Richmond Hill. So we'll come back. I'll come back, sure. Thank you all.
Come back, right. Also, just want to add a note that, yes, Oranio Pius, who is one of our longtime associates and EPTP trainers, who brought the EPTP to Brazil, to Spain, briefly to Portugal, and at times to Italy. And he's not with us today, but he's certainly been an important friend and associate, and as Mauro, you say, a mentor to many others. So thank you for reminding me. Terry?
Yeah, we're switching now to the Netherlands, and unfortunately, Hannah Nautens couldn't be with us today. She's on actually an airplane flying back from here, but she sent a note to ask me to read. So she says, I regret very much not to be able to attend the call in person. I want to thank the whole EPTP team, and especially you, Helen, to have continued this life-transforming work for so long. It has been a great blessing in my personal life and for all of us in the Netherlands. I am grateful I can contribute to this, to spread the light further thanks to your teachings. May the work evolve ever further and contribute to the healing of our world. We do need it. I personally, my first international trip was to the Netherlands when David became ill one year, and that was quite an introduction to the Enneagram. And they'd already had a community going. And now I'd like to switch to Corey Wates, who's representing the association in the Netherlands, to see what you have to share with us. Where's Corey?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for this invitation. And I fully agree with Hannah, what she said. We celebrate our 15th anniversary, and she was in our gathering, and she gave us a beautiful song from the song, I don't know whether you're familiar with it, is Return to the Land of Your Soul. So it became our theme that day, and probably we will work on that. Well, what I want to share with you all as a community is that I am so grateful for the narrative tradition in my personal life, of course, but as an association, we see in our small and rich country, the Netherlands, that their individuality is very, very high on the list. And when you have the narrative, you have to, somebody who's telling the story, there's somebody who has to ask questions, so that relationship between someone who is telling and somebody who is listening, that dynamic can hopefully heal one of our worst diseases in the Netherlands, and that's the loneliness. We see that panels and listening to a personal story can help you to move from being an individual to a human being. So I think it's a beautiful instrument we share, and not only for my own generation, but also working with people of 20 and 30 years old. Communication is very important. but being an individual, you can not only communicate with your social media and your information and data, but you need a human being to feel connect and come into that energy together. So I think the narrative is healing, and I'm so grateful for that. Thank you. I can't. Thank you. I can't hear you, Terry.
I said thank you, and was back to you, Peter, but he seems to have disappeared for a moment. So there you are.
Okay.
Here I am. I'm back.
You're back.
So, okay, so moving around Europe, we're going to go to Spain now, and Gemma de la Rosa. Gemma, please tell us, kind of what you have to say today about the EPTP and the narrative in Spain.
Hi, folks. Good evening from Madrid, Spain. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to be here today with all of you and celebrate such an amazing day. 30 years sounds so much. I'm also very grateful to belong to this community because it was here when I started my way in the Enneagram, in fact. I walked my first steps helped by David and also Rane in the EPTP. And I have to say that was his kindness, his humility, and his humanity what really awakened my desire to keep exploring this thrilling way. And I also remember the hours I spent crying with Helen's book in my hands, reading about my type. And all of this really was a point of no return in my life. And after all this year, I can say that here I have found very good friends that are here and I'm seeing right now. And that the Enneagram has become really part of my work and a very important part. And what is even more important, a core part of my life. Nowadays, we are living very strange moments in my country, Spain, and maybe not only here, maybe it's the entire world, the world that seems to be a little bit crazy. And most people here see it as a place of scarcity and competition, maybe more than ever. Therefore, it's not being easy to spread the Enneagram in Spain, but the good news is that I'm stubborn enough to keep trying. Anyway, I think this moment should make us think of the importance of the ultimate message, that is the Enneagram is about unity and diversity, and that we all belong despite our differences. And really, we need to collaborate to make this community become stronger. I think that's enough. And thank you so much, Helen, Peter, Terry, Marion, Rene, and all of you for allowing me to share the celebration with you.
Thanks, Hannah. It's very well said. The point of no return, I think many of us can relate to that. And the need to keep using the Enneagram to build community. Well, okay, so from Europe, we're going south to South Africa to hear from Suzette Fisher. And Suzette, that lively spirit who's been able to, keep the narrative happening and keep the EPTP happening, and it's kind of amazing. And I've been there a number of times and learned so much from being with you, Suzette, and your community there. So what would you like to share with us today?
Hi, Peter and everyone. I struggled actually to get online, but I'm lucky that we still have 2 students staying with us in the house. And my one son came to call me to say there's a lot of strange faces on the screen, Mom. But when I came to sit in front of the computer, it feels really like family. So it's very special to be here and to celebrate with all of you. And this morning, when I started thinking about this big celebration today, it goes back to 2013, Peter, when you first came with David and Judy to South Africa, doing the first EPTP not only in South Africa, but in Africa, and having actually students from Ethiopia and Malawi and Botswana joining us. And since then, you came back twice. And I'm very grateful for the scholarship committee And I know many of you also that contributed to that, that made that possible. Otherwise, we would not have had the EPTP in South Africa at this stage. So I'm quite proud to say, Peter, after your last visit, we've got now 8 narrative teachers in South Africa and 1 in Malawi. And I feel it's quite an honor that I've been given the license. Thank you, Helen and Terry and Marian and Rene, all of you for your support in making this happen. And I don't think many of you know that Peter really can write long emails. And Peter, I'm really so grateful for your continuous support. And Rene also, especially 3 weeks ago with our Untitled Chapter. And just this weekend, I had a workshop here in Pretoria, and it's really opening up. I think the big challenge for South Africa is that we have 11 official languages and different people from different cultures. And sharing the narrative, we share our stories. And just this weekend again, when our history comes up with apartheid, and really a holy moment where someone actually stood up and said, can I please say something and speak for me and my people? And it's really, it was a moment of that people really started shedding tears, and it's such an amazing platform, the Enneagram, for all of us in South Africa. It's a new voice. And I have hope, I really have hope for our country, for our people, and I have a lot of love and gratitude for all of you for supporting and being cheerleaders in this project. Thank you very much.
Suzanne, it's a pleasure to hear you and see you, and it's just great that we can be connected. You know, I mean, the sound quality is not perfect, but you know, to be able to see and talk to you from across the world is just, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much. Next up, we want to talk, actually we want to hear about the Enneagram in Thailand. And so we'll go to Joan Ryan, who, Joan, I think you're still in Boston, but you know, maybe you're part Thai at this point. So what's happening?
I'm here both on behalf of myself and also my 20 years treasured teaching partner, Santi Caro. He's in Bangkok. It's the middle of the night. Many of you know that he's a 1. So when you have a teaching partner for 20 years who's a 1, you learn about time schedules and you learn to prepare. Goes against my nature, but okay. This is from Santi Caro and then from me. From Santi Caro. In the late 90s, EPTP was a wonderful way for me to plunge into the Enneagram through a rich experiential process artfully guided by Helen and David. Not only did I meet friends such as Joan who have remained close over these 20 years, EPTP provided me with a foundation for guiding an Enneagram program in Thailand, I'll say co-guiding, that is still going strong. For me personally, this learning has most benefited my work as a meditation teacher. The Enneagram narrative approach has aided my skills in listening to reports by and questions from meditators so that I have a more nuanced understanding of what they're trying to express and how they're experiencing things too often assumed to be universal, when in fact they're strongly and deeply influenced by type. Helen inspired this application of the Enneagram, and all our students owe her a debt. After more than 15 years, our annual Enneagram workshops and our Enneagram and meditation retreat will again take place here in Thailand. In fact, this is where he is today, continuing this engaging work with Thai friends new and old. Best wishes to all of you. May we continue to further the work of our beloved mentors. And Santi Caro right these days signs all his emails. May all beings be safe and sane. My gratitude for this teaching partnership is too great to speak of, but here goes for me. 2 key words come to me when I think about my experiences of 25 years with EPTP, both gratitude and opportunity. When I first found the Enneagram in 1994, I had no idea of the power it would allow me personally to change, expand, and improve my life. I am so very grateful for teaching from both Helen and David, my opportunity personally to be immersed in the EPTP and to expand my knowledge beyond the certification process by being the program manager and learning to teach under direct coaching along with superb colleagues in the Enneagram community. The opportunity to travel with Helen in Europe and directly learn how to work through translators, which became so invaluable to me in Thailand, as well as to travel to places that I had never been and experience the gift of making friends in different cultures all over the world. The opportunity to help establish the first on-site EPTP training in the Netherlands and to continue on in England and Ireland, and I see my friends from there today. Learning with Santikaro how we could actively work our own type of material, his 1 to my 9, to our own growth as a strong model for our students and ourselves. Finding Santikaro in 1999 in the kitchen at Vallombrosa while he was watching a football game in his full Thai monk regalia, and helping to found the Enneagram teaching and learning community in Bangkok, and to go there for 15 years, establishing friendships and insights and colleagues all along the way. The advantage that the sophisticated Enneagram knowledge has given to me in my leadership coaching practice, which became my day job and allowed me to support myself and my family very well. The advantage that my immersion in the Enneagram gave to my younger daughter, a young 8, who enjoys great business success now, largely based on her self-knowledge and her self-control by knowledge of her strengths and challenges. But most of all, for the friendship and camaraderie of the many people I've met in my own travels all these years, and especially the calm inner space from which I can now interact with all of them.
Thanks, Joan. You've been around, not only in your own area, but you've been around the world. So thanks for all the great training you've done. And also, it's just awesome that you and Santikaro got the narrative Enneagram well planted in Thailand.
And well planted in a new generation there too, which is really great.
Yeah, okay. A new generation, that's what we're looking for here. So, all right, I want to just say something about China, and then we'll hear from our friends. In 2003, Manita Choi brought Helen to China for the EPTP. And then in 2005, Helen went back and took me along, and the EPTP has been going on strong in China since that time for about 15 years. And there's so much I could say about being in China. It's just been a privilege to work with mostly young Chinese, actually, who are so enthusiastic about the Enneagram. And I have so much appreciation for Manita Choi, who couldn't be with us. It's the middle of the night, and she needs her sleep. But she was has been and still is our leader there, and it's just amazing, that we could bring this Western system of psychology to China and place it in that context. And so, anyway, I'll stop and just introduce our colleagues. So I think we have Adnan and Sarah. Is that right?
Yeah, but we didn't together.
Okay. So what would you like to say to us about, and by the way, thanks for talking to us in English. I know that's a stretch for you. We should all learn Chinese, but that's another story. So,
all right.
What would you like to say to us today?
So who's first?
You go.
Me?
Yeah.
Or okay. So hello everyone. Just like Peter and our Thailand friend said, it is 3 o'clock in China. So I think Enneagram may being introduced to Hong Kong in 1998, maybe. But enter in the mainland China nearly 10 years later. So 2005 maybe.
Yeah.
So it is the 15 years of the Chinese EPTP. And 10 years ago, I met Helen, Terry, and Peter in the United States, and of course, and David Daniel. I miss him so much. And I miss you, Helen. We see each other at the Taiwan maybe the year before last year. And I want to thank Peter for his work in China every year. Most of the time, I imagine that if I can burn maybe 30 years earlier, we can working together. It is about 3 or 500 people teach Enneagram in China right now. But our EPTP trainer in China is about 50 this year.
50. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think in China, the training fee and the cost is the most expensive all over the world. I think it's about 20,000 RMB for 4 days workshop. And about 3 times as much as in Taiwan. But more and more people want to learn Enneagram, and more people know EPTP. Many Enneagram teachers wants to have professional and training. As you know, there is nearly 2 billion people in China. So I think the EPTP will get better with everyone's effort. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for being such a out there teacher and bringing it to so many people. You know, I mean, you're teaching a lot of people. Is Sarah with us? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah from Beijing, China. I studied the Enneagram from Helen and Peter and Monita in 2004. And David, Terry, Mario, all my teachers. I miss you. I love you. Now I am teaching Enneagram in China. Enneagram has been in China for 20 years. Now we have students of Enneagram in many different cities in China. They all love these knowledges. China has a long and rich history of spiritual traditions like Buddhism and the Tao. Many people's understandings of Enneagram stays only on behavior level. It is also a challenge for Enneagram teachers in China. So I suggest that we should work on ourselves further, expanding our personalities, make Enneagram a psychology for development, make ourselves a matter of knowledge, make more people benefit for Enneagram. Blessing to all Enneagram teachers all over the world. You are bringing more hope to people. Thank you very much.
Sarah, thank you for talking to us. And I just mentioned that You were actually the first teacher certified in the EPTP in China. And I remember that evening when you got your certification. So, and thanks for all the good company that you provided and all the support for the team in China. Okay, back over to Terry.
So I just want to, am I muted? I just want to note the time. We were over expansive. For me, that's a growth opportunity to think we could do this in an hour and a half. So we are probably going to run over some. I hope you can stay on. If any of the US speakers cannot stay on, let me know so that we can get you on before you have to leave. So moving to the US, we want to invite Mary Jo Ruccio to speak first. Mary Jo has had a unique role in the organization of helping transition us from the organization structure we had to the nonprofit. She helped me create this organization, and I want to turn it over to you to say a memory or two of what you have that you'd like to share, Mary Jo.
Oh, thank you, Terry. First, I want to say that the Enneagram has been a double blessing for me. When I heard Helen say, what stands between you and God is you, it really changed my life. Because then I learned that really, as I studied the Enneagram, what stands between me and all that I desire is me. And that was that changed everything for me. So Helen, thank you. You know, God has a way of using us. I am not a teacher. I'm listening to all you teachers, and I'm so touched by all that you've brought to the world. What God invited me to do was to work with Terry to hold the container for the training that you love. And I feel so privileged to have done that. Some of you have heard me say before, I was retired when Terry approached me for the third time. And everything I learned in every job I had, I needed in this job to help create that first organizational structure to hold the EPTP. And it's a great joy to me to now see the two organizations that have been the face of the Enneagram joined into one organization so that we're no longer confused. And all of you had incredible opportunities of working with David and Helen as your teachers. And I also had that opportunity. But I also had the opportunity of working with them in their deep humanity and their own growth. And the same with Terry and Peter and Rene and Marion. And I feel just extremely blessed for all of that 8 years that I had with EPTP. And I'm really honored to be on this call. So thank you, Terry.
A little to accommodate people that have to leave. So Ginger, where are you? What would you like to share with us about your journey with Enneagram, our business coach, teacher, organizer extraordinaire, all your many works over the years? What would you like to say?
Well, when Peter and I talked about my doing this, he said, you can say anything you want to. I said, 2 stories came to me, so I still feel like those are what I want to share. So I first met Helen at Esalen Institute, where I'd gone to workshops there. I also met Terry there. But Helen and I had been a gate guard there, letting people on and off and on the property. And I signed up for this Enneagram workshop because it was the only program I didn't know anything about. So I'm randomly there. And I'm sitting there with Helen's book, I'm the only one in the room against a wall on a pillow, and this woman comes up to me. She's standing, she puts her hand out, and she says, "Hi, I don't know you, but I like you." And I don't even know that this is Helen at this moment. I'm thinking, that's a little strange. But what I really thought was, that's pretty quirky. I like this woman too. You know, she's got an edge. She dares to say what she thinks. She's spunky. You know, and then I went through 5 days, and Terry was a participant because it was billed on the catalog as a beginner's program, which I was, but it was actually an advanced program, which she was. So there we go. So after the program, 5 days, I went outside and I went overlooking Esalen, the water, and I got a message from a blimp dirigible that said, "Your job is to bring the Enneagram out more into the world." And I said, "Well, that's not my plan." And it came back and says, the blimp said, "It doesn't matter what your plan is." So I said, "Well, what am I supposed to do?" And they said, "Just be still, it will be obvious." Now, I look back on that, and I think Helen infused me with something. She picked up something. Helen, we never talked about this, so I don't mean to embarrass you, and you probably don't remember it, but I do. And so I enrolled in the EPTP and loved it, and had good taste to pick Terry and Peter as my 2 supervisors before they were Terry and Peter. You know, they were Terry and Peter, and I really loved it. So, and then when part of the training, you have to interview a bunch of people, and get, you know, typing interviews. So I picked my clients, and they wanted to know how to use it in their organizations. And so that's where it became clear that I was supposed to do something in the business sector. It wasn't my initial plan, but it was the plan. So I always say to people who say they found the Enneagram, I say, no, the Enneagram finds you. And how did it find you? Because if you're a vehicle for it, you know, we're not the users of it, we're the vehicles for it. So then I go through the program and I meet David. So the next story is about David. Judith Searle and I were co-chairs of the IEA conference one year, and we had gotten Claudio to be the keynoter, which was very controversial, fine, but also exciting because he'd never been to the IEA. So Judith Searle, who's the author of the Literary Enneagram, and I were like figuring out, well, how can we get people to stay to the end? And we said, let's do a children's panel, because my son knew the Enneagram, and he had friends here who knew their types, and Peter had 2 kids who knew their types, right, that were in the right age group. And Judith and I said, okay, we'll get the kids, who should lead it? And we absolutely agreed it should be David, because in my view, he's like the inspiration for all panel facilitation. He's so fabulous. So, and especially with kids, can you imagine, you know, 10 to 13-year-olds. So I called David because I knew him better. And at that point in time in the Enneagram world, the belief was you couldn't do typing with people under 35 or 40 because they didn't know themselves very well. Not all of us thought that, but that was the prevailing thought. And it could hurt their ego structure development and all that. But I'd seen it in my son, and it worked really well. And he knew this type since he was 6. And, you know, Peter's kids didn't seem the worst for it. So we went forward with it. So I called David up and I say, David, we have this idea. And I shared it with him. And he goes, oh, no, we can't do that. They're too young. It's too this, it's too that, you know. So I listened to David go like that. And I said, that's really too bad, David, because we're going to do this panel anyway. We really want you to be, we think you're like the greatest for this particular age group, but also a great facilitator. So, but if you won't do it, we'll find someone who was more comfortable with it. David goes, I'll do it. I'll do it. And he did. And he was fabulous. And I think it was a marker of, in some level, of something he was so happy with, because he put it on his website and, you know, he's very proud of it. And it changed the whole view of how you work and when you work with children. And I think that just Helen being smart, infusing people, brilliant, David being quirky and clever and talented, and he broke the mold. And I always remember him that way. You know, he dared to do what wasn't okay, but he made it okay. And I guess I would just say, and this is where I can get emotional about this, but what I really value also about both Helen and David is that it was never about them. The work that they did, it wasn't about Helen. It wasn't about David. It was about the Enneagram. And so I think for most of us, I hope, have gotten that message. It's like we're here for the Enneagram, It's not about me. It's not about Peter. It's not about Terry. It's not about anybody. It's about the Enneagram. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Ginger.
Yeah.
So we have a couple more people that have to go off. And just a reminder, if we can keep it brief, that would be great. And I know there's a lot to say and it's hard to do. But Sharon Rudy, where are you?
I am here.
I am here. There you are. Hi.
Hi there.
DC.
Yeah. So welcome everybody. Hello from Washington, D.C., which I consider the war zone in the struggle of the conscious and the unconscious. Just a couple quick statements. One is that in the late 1980s, I was shown a video of people talking about their types. And I remember seeing an Asian architect talk about himself as a 9. And it was a profound moment for me to hear somebody tell my deep story with such clarity, such authenticity, and such kindness. So that started me off on the path of workshops and certification and all of that. And I thought for sure that I would move naturally into teaching and training and coaching and counseling and all of that. But my career just really went in a different direction. And I continued in my industry, which is international development, in particular global health, running large global health projects. And I knew that if I was going to stay awake, that I needed to have the Enneagram be the language of the program that I run, the work, the way we talked about ourselves as individuals, as teams, as professionals. And so I basically started hiring my colleagues, some of who are on this program, to run workshops and my annual retreats and that sort of thing. And it was a complete abuse of power, but to the greater good. And in the course of doing that, because of the nature of the kind of work that I did, we were asked through the State Department by the White House to help them sort through a serious issue that they were having with a large multi-billion-dollar program on AIDS relief. It's called PEPFAR. And all the federal agencies were fighting and they couldn't quite get themselves together. And so we developed a multi-party collaboration training that I actually worked with 6 colleagues, including David Daniels, to design and implement this program. We required different representatives of federal agencies to be there: the State Department, the Center for Disease Control, the United States Agency for National Development, the Department of Defense, the Peace Corps. I mean, all kinds of different cultures in the federal government to come together. It was very intense. The Enneagram was the core of it. It was hugely successful. My program ended and we went on to different things. Still to this day, I really I often come across people who were changed by that experience. And we're talking presidential appointees, senior research scientists. It was really an important contribution inside the federal government that's really brought forth a lot of outcomes, which I'm really was happy to be a part of it. So thanks. And congratulations, you guys.
And thank you, Sharon. I mean, to know that there's intelligence happening underground over in that part of the country is a great relief to a lot of us. Leslie Hirschberger, where are you?
I'm right here. I am so happy to be here and so honored to be here. I'm just going to say one quick thing. When I first certified back in Vallombrosa with Helen, David, and Joan, you were there. I was all excited and went up to Helen and said, I want to tell everyone about this. I'm so excited. And she said, do you love them? It was about my family. She said, do you love them? And I said, yes. She said, then work on yourself. And that's been the real cornerstone of the focus of the work I'm doing here in Cincinnati which Helen calls her East Coast base. Only someone from Berkeley calls Cincinnati their East Coast base, but is really focusing on three-centered practice, whether it be in grief work. We're getting a slew of young people, businesses call. The spiritual work is where my heart is, and I'm just so grateful for all of you, because all of you have been part of this unfolding. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie, for all the good work you've done. And we're gonna go a little out of order. Our board chair, Cheryl Cowen, has a 3 o'clock client. She's a psychologist. So she's gonna say her closing remarks now instead of at the end. Cheryl, over to you. And then Peter will be back in the order we talked about.
Thanks, Terry. I have to say, we are a very impressive group, I've got to say. We've come a long way since Helen and David began their teaching collaboration 30 years ago. And we are all here celebrating and remembering their vision. In 2011, we became a nonprofit organization and had an angel investor who got us on our feet as a viable entity, who could support the marketing and administration to make all these trainings happen for hundreds of folks interested in certifying. This past year, the training organization merged with the membership organization as a way to increase our prospects for sustainability, which is our job one as the board of the Narrative Enneagram. Now that our sustaining grant has ended, we need to diversify our supporters to keep this mission alive and well. This year, we expect training revenue to cover only about 65% of our $750,000 budget for the year. To make up the difference, we rely on donations, membership fees, and product sales. You can support the Narrative Enneagram by becoming a member with free access to our newsletter and webinars. You can buy our products through our online store. You can give us a donation so that we can, as the only nonprofit Enneagram teaching organization in the United States currently, continue to bring this work to a whole new generation of students. I want to thank you for being part of the Enneagram community, and I am really happy to consider you members of my tribe. Thanks.
Thank you, Cheryl. That's great. Short and to the point. And, you know, God bless our board, you know, and I mean, it's the amount of time and attention and energy that you volunteer in the service of the narrative is really awesome. So thank you again for all that work that you do. Okay, so Terry, back on schedule, or back on track, I should say.
Sandra needs to leave, so go to Sandra first.
Okay.
Sandra.
Congratulations to Narrative Enneagram from Asheville, North Carolina. After I certified at Bon Secours in 2001, I invited Helen and David to bring the East Coast training to the Asheville area to Montreat Conference Center. And that was EPTP's first foray into the southern region of the United States. And, you know, I think we had a 9 or 10 year run. And in 2004, when that began, Terry, I think that was your first time co-leading the Enneagram Intensive, and you co-led with David. It was wonderful. And year after year, I'm remembering Helen's term for David, relentless. That David Daniels would hike up to Lookout Mountain every time we had a training, and the participants would come back exhausted and yet exhilarated, and we had a great time. So he was relentlessly hiking up the mountain, and that land, the mountains, the hemlock trees really held us as we explored our inner landscape. It was a beautiful place. And throughout the many years of participating in that intensive, I really learned the power of a safe container and the sacredness of witnessing. And when leadership can hold a safe container and panelists dive deep and share honestly, it's made more powerful by a witnessing community. And in that witnessing, we find our common humanity. And I think as a full-time Enneagram teacher and consultant, that's been a common thread, that we're more alike than different. And though we start with these 9 diverse perspectives and internal operating systems, if you will, if we explore them deep enough, we discover our alikeness. And one of the most powerful moments in my teaching career came a few years ago. Helen, you'll love this. When I received a call from a group leader at the Oak Ridge National Lab in Tennessee, which was decades ago home of the Manhattan Project. Most of my friends protest outside of that place. And he said, we want to have an Enneagram training. And I almost said, why the hell is that? And I said, why? What is this about? And he said, you know, my group goes to Russia 50 times a year, and we work with them on nuclear safety, and we're having some personality issues. And I want my people to develop more compassionate understanding. Well, that's all it took. It was just a beautiful moment to hear that people wanted to learn who were engaging people around the world. And I learned so much from them in the process. So enough, but congratulations. Loved teaching with you and David. Helen, nice to see you again. And keep up the good work. Yeah, thanks.
And you too, Sandra, for all your good work in early days of bringing the Enneagram to the South, and your new podcast that everybody knows about. And anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think B dropped off. I think she had a meeting. B, are you still here? No, sorry, we missed B. All right, over to you, Peter.
Well, next up, we want to talk to our friends, other friends in California, Susan and Rick Olesic, who are the founders of the Enneagram Prison Project. And there's a lot to say about that, but I'll let them speak. Susan?
Thank you, Peter. I see Rick on the other screen, which is about the story of our life, and I'm sitting here in Starbucks with the other start of my life. Just really congratulations to EPTP and all you've done. When I first certified, I felt like I passed the bar, and I got invited to teach 2 places. One was in a church and one was in prison. And after I went to prison, I realized what the Enneagram could do, and I realized I didn't really understand how it was inside myself. And people around me, including so many of you on the call, and especially David and Peter, who are my first teachers, really supported me going into prison and trying to teach this thing. And I remember a type 8 panel, I read 8 8s in the very beginning. And I had one guy say to me, who gave you my file? How do you know these things about me? And I thought, I don't, I just know about the 8, and you told me that's what you are. And that's when I really started to believe this thing could do a lot. And I founded Enneagram Prison Project in 2012 and 2013. The Narrative Enneagram then became our fiscal sponsor, which meant that we could act like a real organization, even though we didn't have the chops to do it. And that to me is the spirit of what this organization does, is that you really are and have been, and we are about seeding other people who can believe in themselves and take this to another level. And the Enneagram belongs in the hands of everybody, for sure belongs in the hands of the people that are in prison. I'm sitting right now 5 minutes from the jail class I just taught in an hour south of San Francisco, where there are 80 men in there who are very much on the path to understanding their higher selves. And this learning that we've had in this community is phenomenal. We have our arms around a training program so that we can harness all the intelligence that's on this call and all around us, so that we can have more teachers. And I believe that the EPTP will be in San Quentin to start, and many prisons thereafter. So I'm just delighted to be a part, and I'll pass it over to you, Rick, for our other 60 seconds.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, it is kind of the way of our life, is that we're different places talking on phone calls. But I just want to echo something that Susan said, because it really was a huge leap for us to do this, but it was a bigger leap for the narrative to come alongside of us and to support us, and to do so in such a beautiful way, with, in kind of a, hey, can you try to do this with us? We really want to, try to execute something. And just the yes we can attitude, the sure we can, how can we help? It was just such a beautiful partnership. And every time I think about, in Vallombrosa, and think about Terry and David and Peter and Helen and Marion and Rene, and I think of how that started. And so I just really want to just appreciate that. And yes, we're in a lot of different jails and prisons. We're reaching out to different countries. We're starting up in the UK. We're in Finland. We're in Belgium now. We're starting in Australia and others to come. But those are just, they all started from a little seed. And so thank you so much for all of that.
Well, much appreciation for your groundbreaking work. And I have to say that for years, I thought it was a great project and you all were doing good things. But this past year with Susan, I went into San Quentin and taught a couple classes there. And I really got it in my body. It's like, yeah, I get it. These guys are really motivated and the Enneagram can help them. And, you're doing great work. Thank you.
Well, just to say something, Peter, there, thank you. They really are the teachers too, right? So we go in, and yes, we, Susan and other teachers will bring, Enneagram curriculum, but really, they're also the students. The teachers are the students because it's reciprocal, and that divine reciprocity is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And that came from David initially, the democratization of teaching. We're all teachers and we're all students at the same time.
Okay, Terry, back to you.
Okay, so Arizona, we have two representatives from Arizona. Carol Whittaker was there in the early days. Carol, what do you have to share? Are you there, Carol? Oh, we lost Carol. Bummer. Jay, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi, Terry.
Hi, Jay.
Hi. Congratulations, Narrative. Your training was a life-changing experience for me. Very, very heart-opening. I don't know why I'm getting this feedback. I'm sorry. One of the first places that I taught was with Linda Frazee in the Maricopa County Court system, with judges and administrative staff. And I use the Enneagram to this day in all of my work, teaching and in coaching. And also in 2008, so 10 years ago, it was fall of 2008, I was part of a group of women, 10 women, 9 of us EPTP certified, who started the Arizona Enneagram Association, also a nonprofit. And we've changed a lot over the years, but in the beginning, we had 9 teachers, and we were all, we had every type represented except type 1. But we had a lot of type 1 energy in there. We had wings. We had Jerry Fathauer with Self-Pres 3, who filled that role very well at times. And I really think that having every type represented was one of the reasons that we were successful, because we worked together very well. We used what we had been taught in managing our own reactivity. Now in the AEA, as we're shifting and adapting to changing times, we do have teachers who are not narrative trained, but we do encourage bringing forth the principles of the narrative always. So panels, process work, presence, 3-centered learning. I would say that our most valuable offering, and really what is dearest to our heart, is our spiritual freedom intensive classes. And well, we offer it in 2 forms, classes and an intensive. And this is work that came as a result of follow-on work from Helen's spiritual freedom work when she would come to Arizona and offer this series of classes. The local teachers would do follow-on classes after that. And we've held that as our most precious body of work. And we bring that forward, like I said, in several forms. And most recently, it was a collaboration with CenterQuest Online Learning, Lifelong Learning Center. It's an ecumenical center. And we brought that work forward through them and offered it in an online format. So congratulations, you guys. You're very dear to my heart. I'm so appreciative of what your work has meant to me. I'm truly not the same person that I was before I met the work. And that's probably a pretty good thing. So thank you.
All right. To Maryland and our friends Marianne and Teresa, what do you have to share? Transform Inc., their organization that's been around, I forget how many years now, teaching the Enneagram to businesses.
Hi, sorry I'm here. I'm going to let Teresa speak and then I'll chime in.
Okay. So I first attended an Enneagram training program at Vallombrosa in January of 1997. And in those days, Helen was demonstrating her intuitive work. She asked for a volunteer, and so I volunteered. And at that point, Mary and I were just forming Transform, and our intention was to bring the Enneagram into business, into the work that we do in consulting and coaching business leaders. So Helen asked what I wanted to focus on, and I said, our new business. And she said, well, you know, you and Marianne will do for each other what you wouldn't do for yourselves. And I was sort of puzzled by that, but 22 years later, it's proven to be one of the most significant insights that has guided our business success. Our partnership's been built on the foundation of the narrative tradition, being curious, not making assumptions, and valuing and listening to each other's point of view. And our ongoing consulting, training, and coaching for business leaders, managers, sales professionals, individuals is really based on these three core principles. You are an expert on you. Only you can know what motivates and drives you to do what you do. And to be a good leader, you must understand yourself and your impact on others. It's hard to put into words the gratitude that I have for Helen and David and Terry and Peter and Marion and Rene for bringing the Enneagram to me and to us. But all I can say is thank you from the bottom of my heart, and know that my commitment to you, our commitment to you, is to continue to teach the Enneagram in the narrative tradition and uphold the integrity and teachings of the Enneagram as David and Helen have taught us to do.
Thank you, Teresa. So it's true. 92, I started studying the Enneagram, certified in 96. I remember at Vallombrosa, and I was doing a panel, and Peter was supervising, and I looked in the audience, and I saw Helen when I was finished, and she smiled a little bit, and I was like, oh, good, I got through that, but I didn't want to go. Peter said, I think you're finished. I'm like, no, I'm really not. We can keep going. And of course, we couldn't keep going, but I've kept going for years. 22 years we've had the business, been teaching it, was told we couldn't take it into business, which this counterphobic 6 said, oh, I think we can. There's people in business and they need this. And so we persevered. And when people say you're an Enneagram teacher, I say I am. I'm a narrative teacher. I'm a narrative Enneagram teacher. And to me, that's the magic. To be both student and teacher, to be student and witness, and to have the magic happen. So I could tell you about, bringing Helen to town for years and the spiritual work we did and, just all this stuff. But the journey, to be on this journey with all of you has just been one of the highlights of my life. And I love you guys so much. So thank you, Helen. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everybody, from the bottom of my heart to you.
I was there in that training 22 years ago at Vallombrosa with you. Thank you. All right, moving on to Michigan. Rhonda and Joanne have been teaching the Enneagram for ever. Yeah? Who wants to go first?
Unmuted.
There you go. Joanne.
Okay, I'd like to go first and just thank everyone. I am so enthralled and privileged to be a part of this community. I'm very inspired by this meeting. And I want to thank you teachers for helping us, and Helen, David, Terry, Peter, Rene, Marion, the gifts you give, just keep giving. And I wanted to tell you that since I'm thankful for Rhonda too, my friend and partner. After we finished our EPTP at Vallombrosa, we began the Michigan Enneagram Center in 2001, September. And since then, we have been doing panels in this beautiful narrative tradition for amazingly 17 or 18 years. And we just are going deeper. We've studied all facets of the Enneagram, and you all have been so helpful with your support and guidance, Helen Cumming, and your books, your articles. We've based each season on a different facet of your wisdom that you've passed on. And so I'm just here to say the Enneagram is very much alive in Michigan. And I feel so grateful to be able to keep that life going in each member of the panels that we do, each panel, one story at a time. The presence, depth, and support just translates to pure love, and I have that for you. Thank you. And Rhonda, please join in, and I would just like to say this is moving through us. Terry, we're on a path, I feel, with no goal, and Helen, no next, but I know Rhonda will have the answers to those things as to what is next. So thank you, everyone.
I think Rhonda dropped off. Rhonda, are you here? I think we've lost Rhonda.
Oh.
But thank you for sharing, for both of you.
Thank you.
And moving to North Carolina, and Gary, also a board member and teacher. What would you like to share? Unmute yourself, please.
Hi, everyone. I'd first like to say congratulations to all of you for 30 wonderful years. And also thank you. The Enneagram in the narrative tradition came to me at a very difficult time in my life. And the community was created a holding environment while I truly transformed from a great place of pain. And I'm very grateful for that community, for our community, and belonging to something much larger than myself, and being a teacher, bringing the narrative into the world. I'm grateful. I remember David Daniels came to Charlotte shortly after I was certified, and we had quite a large group at a local church where we were doing a relationship workshop, and we thought David was doing it. And about an hour before the workshop, David said, "Did you know you're teaching tonight?" I'm like, "No." So God bless David. He pulled me out there, and I was terrified. And here we are years later, and growing and developing a community, a thriving community in Charlotte. And I have to say that the narrative birthed something very special in my life, and the journey of now being on the board and standing in this space of transition, and at a time where I see the Enneagram landscape really going through a dramatic change of becoming mainstream, and it's exciting, and I do see a very bright future for the narrative. I'm really thrilled to be a part of it. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Anne.
Thank you.
Really great to see you and hear from you. And thanks for making such great things happen in your neck of the woods. Let's see. So we have a couple people left to hear from. I hope you're still with us. Rick Bradstreet, are you still on the call?
I am. I'm here.
Oh, great. So you've been, the pioneer there in Texas and Austin, and held the fort for a long time. And I just want to say, again, in terms of passing it on to the next generation, you have definitely been a big contributor to that. So anyway, over to you. What would you like to share with us today?
First, I wanted to say Leslie is not here, my wife. And she would love to be here. So.
Yeah.
So Austin is in the position of being a popular place. And so we not only have our groups that we're doing, but we have people coming in from other states. So it's a rich fishing hole, and that's a good thing. I worry a little bit about the commercialism, but I think eventually people will run into the narrative tradition and get excited about it and deepen their practice. So I think that'll probably end up in being really positive. The other thing is that this community is great. I mean, it's really, communities come and go. I mean, this is amazing to have 50 people on this call. And I mean, apart from the technology, Evangeline, you're spectacular. But just having 50 people around the world that are doing this and believing it and passing it on, I mean, this is really going to be hopeful. And I'm excited, more excited now than I was, 20 years ago when we started. So thank you so much.
Rick, thanks for your big heart. Appreciate it. And then to Seattle. And Shama, are you with us?
Yes,
I'm here.
Well, great, because you're in some way you're kind of bracketing our program here as someone who's been in the work for many, many years. So what would you like to share with us today?
Well, I wanted to join Denise with this feeling of my heart being really full and grateful for this incredible community, and the inspiration of Helen and the incredible compassion from David. I just I'm still so blessed to have been with all of you all of these years. I want to say that for me, the Enneagram is a living system, and that when people, and I talk about teaching, to me it's not so much about my teaching, but about how, and just witnessing all of these incredible people standing inside themselves, bringing forward how they're connecting with the system in ways that are helping people relax into themselves and relieve their own suffering. I just think that is the greatest gift that we've been able to all share together. We built a wonderful community here in Seattle, and my particular joy is to connect systems. I connect the Enneagram with the Dances of Universal Peace, with systems thinking, and with the whole psychological, spiritual guidance milieu of, and it is such a blessing to be part of this community. I think the image that came to me as everyone was speaking comes from the Native American tradition of the turtles standing on each other's back, holding up the world. And it's kind of like we're in this next layer of turtles and kind of birthing the new one that's going to contribute to the growth of this work. So just blessings to everybody, and thank you for all being here.
Thank you, Sharon, for many things. Many things. Okay, well, Terry, are we Did we get everybody on the list?
We did. We did.
Awesome. Took a little longer, but well worth it.
So you want to close? I'll just say, just thank you all. It just being here and feeling and sensing everyone and the love of the work and what you've done personally and for those in your community. It's awesome. And I'm honored to be part of it. And just let's keep on keeping on and supporting each other as we do. We need this work more than ever. So thank you. And thank you, Helen, for your vision all those years ago.